My name is Alan Day. I'm Point Advisory's Managing Principal for New South Wales, Queensland and the ACT. I'm joining this discussion today from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge that the lands we live on were never ceded. In 2022, the Australian chicken meat industry tasked AgriFutures and its chicken meat program with commissioning and managing the industry's first materiality assessment. The materiality assessment aimed to show which topics, whether issues, risks or opportunities, are of greatest importance to the industry and its stakeholders, and to inform sustainability efforts across the industry. So sustainability consultancy Point Advisory was commissioned to undertake the assessment and report the findings. So I acted as the project director for this work and would like to acknowledge the work of our project manager, Sarah Beatty-Smith, and the special advice we received along the way from Dr. Robin Leeson of STR Consulting. To deliver this industry-wide materiality assessment, we drew upon our experience with Dairy Australia, for whom we undertook their industry-wide materiality assessment in 2019-2020, and using our extensive knowledge of recognised sustainability frameworks. Point Advisory, a bit of background on our organisation. We're a leading sustainability consultancy operating out of Australia, and we're part of the ERM group with over 7,000 sustainability practitioners. Our team of engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs, economists and consultants combine deep technical knowledge and expertise with our strong international networks. We work with public, private and social sectors across a range of thematics in sustainability, including energy, climate change, environmental factors, human rights, sustainable finance, impact measurement and economics. So we wanted to provide a little bit of background and context to really set the scene before we go into the materiality assessment. It's worthwhile painting the background with what our industry represents, what this industry represents. So the chicken meat industry contributes 7.9 billion to the Australian economy and sustains 58,000 jobs across the country. It accounts for 0.45 of Australia's gross domestic product and 0.46 of employment across the country. The industry has grown consistently at 4% per annum over the past 3 decades, with Australians currently consuming more chicken meat per annum than any other meat source. The chicken meat industry plays a particularly significant role in supporting employment and economic output in regional and rural communities across the country. The industry is also unique as it has a relatively low carbon footprint while providing an affordable, nutritional and locally grown source of protein for Australian consumers. The AgriFutures chicken meat program's purpose is to invest in research development to increase knowledge and understanding that fosters an innovative, adaptive and valuable chicken meat industry in Australia. The vision is to grow the long-term prosperity of the Australian chicken meat industry. The objectives for the program are focused on 4 key areas: food, the environment, chicken and the consumer. So while I'll go through some of these are really valuable and really set the frame for our assessment. Improving food safety of Australian chicken meat was the first focus. Second, developing and implementing measures to improve the industry's impact on the environment. Third, improving chicken meat production through the whole supply chain. And 4, improving the industry's ability to meet consumer needs. The materiality assessment is an important foundational body of work to support the long-term prosperity of the Australian chicken meat industry. A little about materiality assessments. What is it? It's a robust and credible process to determine what topics, whether they're issues or opportunities, or a mixture of both, that are most important to a business or an industry, in this case an industry, and its key stakeholders. And how it's used, it can be used to identify your priority areas for research or action in sustainability or from a broader industry-wide strategy. It can be used to inform public-facing communications, and including those to government, but also to the NGO community and the consumer base. Investors are increasingly interested in sustainability strategies and actions of businesses and their corresponding industry bodies. And in seeing the material topics that inform these strategies, they really want to understand where the focus lies for the industry and those that participate in the sector. For those that are listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, there is guidance, for example, on ESG disclosures that requires or encourages a materiality assessment of some form to be undertaken. So a little bit of background on how we undertook the work. We had three core phases of work. The first was a contextual review through a combination of interviews, some workshops, and generating a universe of topics. Secondly, we surveyed a range of industry and external stakeholders and analysed those results. And thirdly, we then determined and applied a prioritisation methodology to assess and prioritise the range of topics that was determined. The outcome of that was a visual representation of the materiality assessment. So let's dive into the assessment results. Now, I'm really just providing a summary. Happy to go into more detailed questions when we get to Q&A. So this is the visual results. The results of the materiality assessment demonstrate a number of things for us, and don't expect you to absorb all of this in one go. This is available publicly, and then happy to take questions in Q&A as well. But I'll highlight a few of the things that we found as standing out. So the results demonstrate the importance of safety, security, welfare and well-being to the Australian chicken meat industry. The fact that animal welfare and food safety were the most important topics shows that the industry prioritises the well-being of the chickens throughout their life cycle in the industry and ensures food is safe for Australian consumers. The importance of topics related to food security, cost of living and the stability of prices and supply chains also shows that the industry plays a crucial role in feeding Australians. Maintaining the stability and security will be important for the industry's own sustainability into the future. The relatively high scores for environmental topics, including climate change mitigation, adaptation and resilience, feedstock, and sustainable packaging, are also noteworthy. These scored highly for importance to both the industry and its stakeholders. And finally, transparency and labelling, marketing scored highly, reflecting a common theme from stakeholder engagement that the industry could do more to market itself as an affordable, sustainable, and healthy source of protein. Just a few notes in terms of how to read this. Because visually, this is represented in two dimensions. The x-axis, the horizontal dimension, reflects the scoring of importance to industry. And the y-axis, the vertical axis, reflects the scoring of prioritisation of topics for a combined group of stakeholders for the industry. Importantly, a few things to note is that topics that are on here because they're inherently important. And what this analysis does is provide a spread, a prioritisation of some sort to really help guide the industry, look at the range of important topics, but potentially inform the extent to which it contributes and potentially influences changes and outcomes that might result in better outcomes for each of those topics. To help with the analysis, we group the topics that we use to break down the analysis. They're not set in stone. They're really just to guide us so that that key of grouping, which reflects the shading of the bubbles, is really just to help guide the analysis of such a long list of topics. The size of the dots in the matrix does relate to the number of impacts that relate to each of the topics. So these include impacts of the industry on the environment, on the economy, and on people, including human rights impacts, as well as the impacts of the topic on the industry, including its financial stability. As part of the process, we undertook a range of engagement. So we wanted to spend some time giving you some insights and giving you some rich information that resulted in some of our engagement activity during the process. We undertook some stakeholder surveys. So what we wanted to do here was share some of the findings. Stakeholders were asked to identify the most important positive and negative impacts that the chicken meat industry has on people, the environment, and the economy. Responses were in free text boxes. So this slide provides a little bit of an analysis on the most common responses, and we tried to break them up from a people, environment, and economy perspective and highlighting them from a positive and negative impact perspective. So when we look at people, the chicken meat industry and a positive aspect, the chicken meat industry does create employment opportunities across Australia that was recognised, including that dimension in rural and regional communities. The industry produces affordable, healthy and sustainable, versatile source of protein to meet the demand of consumers. On the flip side, some of the negative aspects from a people perspective were identifications of noise, odour, dust pollution, as impacts for neighbouring communities where industry is present, where I guess the production part of the value chain is present. Other negative impacts were relating to working conditions, with some respondents noting workforce shortages and the repetitive nature of work from a health and safety perspective and low wages. And from the environmental dimension, some of the positive impacts were around the fact that chicken meat has a lower carbon footprint compared to other meats, and said that this was a key positive impact. The industry is increasing its focus on reducing their environmental impact, particularly in the areas of energy, wastewater, and litter reuse. On the flip side, some of the negative aspects were around soybean meal feedstock being identified as potentially having a negative environmental impact through the source of where soybean meal is being ultimately sourced from, through deforestation and biodiversity impacts, as well as carbon impacts related to its importation into Australia. Respondents also highlighted the need to better manage litter waste and the use of energy and immediate impacts to communities where production occurs. From an economic perspective, employment opportunities were a positive impact, providing communities in rural areas with livelihood and opportunities for work. Respondents also noted the positive impact of affordable chicken meat on the wider economy, so an affordable source of protein. On the flip side, on the negative impacts, respondents expressed some concerns around the structure and ownership of the industry and the impacts of market concentration and foreign ownership on growers and family farms. Looking at some of the verbatim comments, we've pulled together some of them just so that you can get a feel for the comments that had come through. On the top row are the positive impacts that the stakeholders felt the chicken meat industry has or would have on people, the economy or environment, and negative on the bottom row there, either whether they're current or potential negative impacts. Some of the key ones that we haven't touched on, I'll just have a look at. The quality food in reliable quantities was an interesting point. Again, reiterating some of the points that I touched on the previous slide in terms of jobs in regional areas, and also the ability to support a range of employment opportunities for people from a diverse range of backgrounds. On the negative side of the people dimension, there was comments around the understanding of animal welfare conditions being low in the public. With education and transparency, the public could make educated decisions on chicken meat consumption. Another comment was around workers having to do more work as people being made redundant. So here's some really clear verbatim comments, some aspects around pressure being applied from supermarkets to processors around timeframes and meeting expectations of delivery. From an environmental perspective, again, that re-emphasising that point in mentioning the lowest feed conversion ratio of and very little methane is emitted related to cattle, for example. The point again came up about a cost-effective food with a low overall footprint, but recognising on the negative side that the carbon footprint from litter waste is really a big one that does need focusing, as well as recognising that the smell and noise in or near facilities. Again, on the economic side, did reinforce some of the points we mentioned earlier. Creation of lots of jobs. It supports increased economic activity and government revenues. The industry supports direct and indirect employment from poultry operations through to warehousing and distribution. And on the negative side, a couple of interesting perspectives that came up. Equipment being sourced from outside of Australia, the move away from family farms to corporate entities, the need to import major ingredients, and the important aspect of market reliability. So due to the quick nature of chicken production, supply issues have immediate results in the market. So the positive on that is that it also means a quick recovery when things are back on track. Some of the risks that came up, we did ask in the survey the following question: what do you think are the biggest risks facing the chicken meat industry? So they could be current or potential risks, and these are the themes that emerged from that. So we had 7 or 8 topics that came up. So biosecurity and disease. I won't read through all of the content, but I'll just read through the key themes. Biosecurity and disease, economic pressures, labour shortages, activism and protest, regulatory burdens, rise in plant-based proteins, climate change, and industry structure challenges. Other risks included tensions between growers and processors and a potential loss of social license if animal welfare was not protected. Similarly, we asked stakeholders the following question, looking at an opportunity lens. What do you think are the biggest opportunities for the chicken meat industry? Again, that question was asked in the context of a current or potential opportunity, and 7 themes emerged out of these from our analysis: marketing and growth, environmental sustainability, automation, economic development, research and innovation, price advantage, and export markets. Other opportunities included improvements to animal welfare and labour market growth as borders reopen. As part of our engagement, we also interviewed individuals across the industry. We undertook a range of one-on-one interviews. You'll see a list of the organisations and representatives. A total of 18 interviews were held with stakeholders from across the industry, and with 1 representative from the research and scientific community and 3 interviews with major customers. The interviews all followed a common format with the aim of focusing on impacts of the industry and the impacts on the industry of a range of economic, environmental topics and impacts on people, including their human rights. Interviews also included questions to identify key risks and opportunities facing the sector. Common questions that we posed were around seeking their perspectives on the biggest impacts, positive or negative, that the industry has on people, the impacts, positive or negative, that the industry has on the environment, impacts, positive or negative, that the industry has on the economy, risks facing the industry, and opportunities for the industry. A range of themes that came out. Talk about some of the impacts. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this. The groupings that we applied again to support the ability to distill a large volume of information. The economic participant group, job creation, especially in rural and regional areas. Again, we saw that come through interviews. Was a really important point. Chicken meat is not imported to Australia, but there would be significant impacts, was some of the views, significant impacts on the industry if this were to change, including on biosecurity. The industry is increasingly efficient in its production and therefore able to keep prices low. So those were some of the themes that came out from an economic participant perspective. In terms of the industry from a society and community perspective, again, the noise, odour and dust pollution impact on neighbouring communities did come through. Although some comments did recognise that sometimes this isn't within the industry's control as urban residential expansion moves into locations where industry is present. Another point was around activism, particularly from animal welfare activists and their impacts on the industry. From a customer and product perspective, some of the points to highlight: animal welfare is the key concern for consumers, misconceptions around industry practices, e.g. the use of hormones, does impact on trust in the industry. Other perspectives were around safe and sustainable packaging, being a focus area for customers in the B2B, business to business part of the value chain, as well as end consumers. From an environmental stewardship perspective, again, we've heard the comments around the industry having a relatively low carbon footprint. We also heard the points around feedstock, particularly soybean meal's impact on biodiversity and greenhouse gas emissions as a source of concern amongst industry and customers. Workforce employees, so again, we did see a repeat of the workforce shortages point, including as a result of recent COVID-19 challenges and related public health measures, having impacted production and supply and risk impacting safety and animal welfare. And from a broader governance, leadership and business practices perspective, the industry's dominance by a small number of companies gave rise to mixed views on its impact on growers, customers and consumers. And again, the point on increasing ownership of processors and growers by corporate entities is impacting on the viability of family farms and smaller growers. I think the positive aspect that you see, that you'll notice is a lot of common themes and consistent themes come through our two forms of engagement, both survey-based as well as through direct interviews. It's also important to think about the risks and opportunities. There are some that there's always a duality between risks and opportunities, and some of that was picked up through the conversations and the interviews. Common theme that came up was that the industry has many positive attributes that are not always communicated or marketed as effectively as they could be, and we'll come to that point in some future slides. Interviewees also urged the industry to collaborate on shared challenges like sustainable packaging and feedstock, and really urging the industry to think about how can it come up with options and solutions in a pre-competitive space. In terms of next steps, so for those of you that are on the line that are experienced in sustainability, this may not be too uncommon or new to you, but I just wanted to make a point of the importance of materiality assessments. They are foundational exercises in sustainability, providing a robust basis for strategy development and for reporting your performance. It's commonly the first questions that investors ask. It's commonly the first question that informed stakeholders ask of a business or of an industry. For an industry like the Australian chicken meat industry, it's likely that individual businesses may build on the materiality assessment in their own strategies and frameworks, and considering and potentially applying their strategies in conjunction with some shared aims across the industry. Reporting is also likely to be done primarily by individual businesses to meet varying stakeholder needs. Again, listed companies that are in this industry will be very familiar with the range of frameworks that are required and expected. However, any shared reports on the industry's performance in sustainability should use the materiality assessment as their basis. We wanted to share a few perspectives on what the materiality assessment facilitates and how it really helps businesses and the industry move forward from a sustainability strategic perspective, reporting perspective, and any communications and marketing. These are just some suggestions, and there may be many other ways that these results could be used. Wanted to talk through a few of the points. From a strategic level, if you're an individual business, you may build on materiality assessment findings that we've developed to identify your strategic priorities. You may also use the materiality assessment to inform how ambitious or in which areas you may set sustainability targets, reflecting the level of importance of those topics. From an industry perspective, building on the assessment to identify shared priorities for the industry and developing an action plan and strategy for shared action on priorities. From a reporting perspective, individual businesses may draw upon the materiality assessment to inform their sustainability reporting themes, how they might structure their report and their communications, how they might align with the range of sustainability reporting standards, such as the GRI sustainability reporting standards, or more broadly, the Sustainable Development Goals. The industry may seek to gather industry-wide information in relation to some of the most material topics and report on industry performance in a consolidated manner, and include looking at historical performance and discussing shared priorities for future ambition. And in marketing, using the assessment findings to communicate with customers about what matters most to the business. Of course, it's a technical foundational piece. So in terms of how you communicate it, you'll draw upon that in many other ways to communicate to key customers on certain topics. And the industry could lead efforts to market the industry, drawing on the strength of the industry's environmental credentials and particularly compared with other meats and proteins. And I think importantly, overall, the materiality assessment helps identify the nature and extent of the possible areas of research that the industry could undertake. Some initial ones that have come up out of our process may be around soy meal and around packaging. Another point is that we feel it may help inform an industry-wide framework, and we'll touch on a few examples. The Australian Agricultural Sustainability Framework was created to communicate the sustainability status and goals of the Australian agricultural sector to domestic and to global communities and markets. This framework operates at a national level, not a farm level. So farms won't be able to report against this framework, but they will be able to use it to understand finance, supply chain, and market expectations about sustainability strategies and reporting. And this is an important framework that has in part informed how other industries have approached their sustainability priorities. And we've got a few here just to show you. The Australian Beef Sustainability Framework has been in place for some time now and includes 6 priorities: animal husbandry, profitability across the value chain, balance of tree and grass cover, antimicrobial stewardship, managing climate change risk, health and safety of people in the industry are the 6 priorities that were relevant to them. That work was underpinned by a materiality assessment, and then it also underpins and supports and provides, I guess, a reference point from which you can create relevant indicators, whether they're indicators that are based on the impacts that the industry has, or financial indicators that might track and measure the impacts of certain topics on the industry. So here you can see where, leveraging their materiality assessment, Australian beef industry has developed a sustainability framework and then gone on to create a range of performance indicators and impact indicators that are relevant for its stakeholders. Similarly, pork, eggs, and dairy frameworks do exist as well. As I mentioned at the outset of this presentation, we supported Dairy Australia in their materiality assessment in 2019 and 20. I won't go through the detail of all of these, but I guess I'll just quickly to navigate this slide. On the left-hand side, you see the framework for pork meat industry. In the middle, you see the eggs industry, and on the right is the Australian dairy industry framework. That's it from our formal presentation. Really appreciate the opportunity from the department to present the results of this. We appreciate the support from AgriFutures and the Australian Chicken Meat Federation to undertake this important body of work. We hope that it is of value both to the industry and to its members.